As we said earlier, there are two measures of center. One is the mean, and another one is called the median. So when working with skewed data or data that has outliers, the median typically gives a better measure of center. The median is the value that lies in the middle of the data set when the data is arranged from lowest to highest. When working with skewed data or data that has outliers, the media typically gives a better center of average. I believe I already said that, but we're going to say it again just to make sure you've got that. So with symmetric data, the mean is usually better to use for the average, but with data that has outliers or skewed data, the median is better. So for example, for me, when I usually pass back exams, I talk about the average and I usually typically use the median for that because I'm always going to have outliers of someone that maybe does extremely poorly that just wasn't prepared and then someone that does really, really good that gets 100%. And so that median ends up giving a better idea of where most students fell. So if the number of data values is odd, then the median is the middle data value. But if we have an even set of data, then we don't have an exact middle value. So to find that median, you find the mean of the two numbers that fall in the middle of the data set. The median is also known as the 50th percentile, since 50% of the data values lie below the median. So let's go back at look at Mirabel's example. What is the median test score? So if I were to find this by hand, the first thing that I need to do is to put this data in order. So 79, 82, 86, 91, and 94. So in this situation, I have an odd number of data values, so the median is going to be the value that falls in the middle. So which value falls in the middle? And that's 86. That falls right in the middle there. So that means my median is 86. Now I could also use technology to find the median. So you could do it using either Desmos or using Excel or Google Sheets. So you would type in for Excel or Google Sheets equals median, and then you would type the list. Or in Desmos, you would type in median and then list those values. Okay, now let's assume that Mirabel took a 6th exam in her class and received a 70 on it. Now her exam scores for the term are 79, 86, 82, 94, 91, and 70. What is the median test score? So if I put these in order, it's going to be 70, 79, 82, 86, 91, and 94. So now I have an even number of data sets. So the middle is going to happen right in between 82 and 86. So to find that median, we will find what the average is of those two values. So 82 plus 86 divide by 2, since I have two values that I'm using here, and we get 84. So in this situation, the median is 84. We could have also done this using Desmos or Excel and would also get the same value of 84.